Welcome, and thank you for joining LPG Talks Live. My name is André Pimentel, and I'm with ANOVA, the remote tank monitoring partner and industry council member of the World LPG Association. It's an absolute pleasure to host the 5th edition of 2022 of LPG Talks Live. Today's topic, it's about LPG as a marine fuel, and following up from last year's session, we'll discuss beyond LPG carriers. Let me just remind you that this is a World LPG Association meeting and therefore is governed by the World LPG Association statutes, specifically our antitrust guidelines, which prohibits the discussion of commercial sensitive information, such as pricing, volumes, market share, and others. We had a huge interest in this session. Actually, it's around 200 registrations, even higher than last year's session on LPG as a marine fuel. And so I want to really thank you for signing up and showing up today. It's really important for us and for LPG as a marine fuel for the industry. And to kick off our session, I'm very open to welcome Neil Murphy, Vice President of Business Development at UGI International and Chair of the World LPG Association Innovation for Growth goal. Welcome, Neil, and thank you so much for joining us today and kicking off our session.
Thank you very much, Andre. Normally, when I speak to my colleague Nikos, we invariably talk about renewables and then we talk about renewables and sometimes we even talk about renewables. And what I'm excited to do this time is to say we have a significant segment that is not all about renewables. It is all about reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, but it's also about a segment that can embrace LPG as it is, as well as LPG in the future, which will be most possibly a blend of bio-LPG and LPG. So LPG as it is, what really is the target segment? Well, we know that LPG carriers are fueled with LPG. We're very thankful for that. But when you look at the shipping boating industry, for want of a better phrase, what we can see there are many segments whose business ingredients focus on the use and the requirements of LPG. Of course, there are a lot of competitive molecules out there and emerging competitive molecules. But when we look at the ease, the cost of LPG facilitation, the establishment within industry generally of LPG, it really does start to put its head above the parapet in terms of a favoured material. Let us look at some of the competitions. LNG, a terrific fuel, but it's cryogenic, it's highly costly from an infrastructure point of view, and it is not as widely adopted in the world as LPG. When you start to look at some of the new renewable molecules, green methanol, for example, again, terrific molecules, but the infrastructure, the volume, the knowledge, the acceptance, the incubation within the industry isn't really there compared to LPG. So like many of these initiatives that we're looking at, I often feel, and I've used the phrase shout and scream, and I will use it again, because for me, we have a terrific opportunity in LPG in all the, or nearly all the categorizations of boating, whether it be roll-on, roll-off carriers, whether it be cruise ships. It lends itself to 14 to 15 different minor segments within the shipping industry. And that's why it's exciting. It's also exciting because not just one geography has boats. It's truly global. And obviously for the World LPG Association, that fits in very nicely with our charter. So you could hear me waffle on all day. I will give you good grace that I shan't be doing that. And I shall now pass on Bridget, who's going to take on the mantle of moving me on. I just want to say thank you and let's have an enjoyable LPG live discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Neil. That will be my pleasure to move on. So thank you for words. And before moving into the panel discussion that we have today, I'd like to launch a poll or a couple of polls to understand a little bit better the audience. And just as Neil was saying, this is truly a global market. So let us know where you are from. Europe, Asia, and Oceania, Middle East, Africa, North America, or Latin America. If you can vote on the poll window that just appeared, and let us know, because definitely there's an opportunity wherever you are to have LPG as a marine fuel. And we will make a few seconds just to fill in some votes. Maybe we are now, I think we should be good. I cannot see how many have voted. 46 people have voted. Majority are coming either from Europe or Asia, Oceania, and that's a compound 68%. And then we have 2 people from Middle East, 5 from Africa, 5 North America, and 3 Latin America. So thank you very much for joining, and also acknowledging that it's maybe very strange timings and times on your time zone. So really appreciate you joining. And just very quickly, and apologize for this, let's launch poll number 2, which is understanding a little bit which industry sector you represent. And again, we understand that for some of these sessions, these are directed more to some specific audiences. We want to really understand who's joining us today from an industry sector perspective: an LPG distributor company, policymaker, an association, a shipping company, and there's a few options there: either gas carrier, ship cruises, cruise ships, container ships, etc., or a manufacturer, shipbuilder. So let us know from which industry sector you are coming from. And we got 46 votes on the poll before, so we have 67 participants. So that's a good percentage, but it can improve. So please, if you can, help us understand a little bit better about the audience. I think that would be beneficial for us and for you as well. And I think we can close this poll and reveal the results. So we have 47, one more, LPG distribution company at 53% of the participants. So thank you for joining. Policymakers, associations, and shipping company on the gas carrier, and then other shipping companies. And then a few 10 people from other that are not specified. So thank you very much for showing up and tuning in today on the session. And with no further delay, today we will have a panel discussion with an extraordinary selection of specialists. I would like to ask you to please use the Q&A box below to place your questions, and we will follow up on those questions either by writing, or we'll launch them into the panel discussion and make this session as much interactive as possible. And to manage and to moderate our panel, I would like to present Nikos Xidas, Technical Director of the World LPG Association. Welcome, Nikos, and thank you for being with us today.
Many thanks, Andre, and a very big welcome to everyone. Very exciting to be again in our second such LPG talks, which is dedicated to marine. A very big thank you also to Neil for his introduction, but also for chairing all these activities that we have, which includes marine in our association. We have gone a very long way since we started promoting the LPG for marine, and already we have about, you will see further on, about 130 orders of LPG engines, and something like 40 vessels are already running on LPG. So very exciting and a very encouraging really result for such a short period of time, I would say. So all looks good and green ahead, but we need to go even faster with embracing also other segments outside the LPG carriers that we have so well done up to now. So as Andre said very well, we have a fantastic panel with us today, and our panel consists of Suyash Gupta. Suyash is the founder and the managing director of Clean Fuel in India, Autogas. and really a big pioneer for autogas, and now we see also for the small marine engines. In the panel, we have also, of course, our manufacturer MAN with Hirishikesh Chaturvedi, who is the pioneer with these engines. He's the manufacturer of the LPG engines that we have today in our big carriers, or big and smaller carriers. We have also a ship operator, Thenamaris LNG. We have Iason Hadjakis with us. So welcome, Iason. Great to have you with us. Who is going to give us the perspective of the ship operator on LPG and on the other fuels in general. And of course, you will see in the end Panos Mitru. Panos, many of you know that he is the chair of a specific marine activities in WLPGA, and he will give us his global perspective from Lloyd's register position, and also he will say a few things about what we will be doing in the future in WLPGA. Before we go into the presentations from our presenters, from our panelists, I would like, however, to run one more poll. So if we could have the next poll up, who will tell us what you think is should be or are the next promising segments for LPG besides the LPG carriers that we have today. So the poll is up, I see. We have container ships. Actually, container ships is one of the targets, the next targets for our work. We have the bulk carriers, the cruise ships, of course, all are in our target. The ro-ros are the ferry boats that many of you know, small coastal vessels, fishing vessels, fishing fleets, and we wouldn't, of course, leave outside our leisure boats. So I don't know how the vote is going. How long do we have more? Give it one more minute.
Nikos, let me just add that it's not one question only, it's 3 questions. So we have the first one, following the adoption of the LPG carriers, in which 3 segments you see the most promising future for LPG, and that's a multiple choice, as Nikos was saying, container ships, ro-ros. That's something I learned today. Thank you for that, Nikos.
Yes, you can vote three out of these, 3 out of the ones you see on the list.
Correct. Then we have the second question a little bit below, which is, which would you consider today has the most promising alternative marine fuel? And that's a single choice. You have LPG, LNG, ammonia, methanol, hydrogen. So do vote on number 2. And number 3, just below, so we really need to look for it. It's, would you invest in LPG as fuel now on the way to ammonia in the future? That's a key question to understand where we stand in terms of intention. So let's give it a little, because it's 3 questions, I think we should probably give it couple of seconds more. And I cannot see how much have voted, but if we are around 60% or 70% of the audience, that should be enough.
We have 60%, Andre. Shall we call it now?
Yes, that would be great. Thank you, Bridget. And on the results, so following the adoption of in LPG carriers, in which 3 segments do you see the most promising future? And with 53% fishing boats and fleets, with 47%, and coming off number 2, it's small coastal vessels, and then we have a technical tie between container ships and leisure boats, inboards or outboards, and so those are the 2 plus 2 that stand on the top 3 selections. And which would you consider today as the most promising alternative marine fuel? And with 68% of the answers, LPG, renewable LPG, or renewable DME stands out of the rest of the fuels. which is very promising, Nikos. And last but not least, 84% of the people said that, yes, they would invest in LPG as fuel now on the way to ammonia in the future. So with these results, and probably I think you have some content here to comment with you and the panelists, I'll pass the word back to you, Nikos.
Yeah, I think great results, Andre, on all the questions that we saw, and I'm very pleased to see also that the segment of the smaller engines has got such a preference, which is exactly what is bringing us to the first presenter or the first panelist, who is Suyash Gupta. So welcome, Suyash.
Thank you.
Fantastic to have you with us again. So Suyash is the founder and managing director of Clean Fuel India Autogas, as I mentioned before. And he will talk to us about the segment of the smaller engines for smaller fishing boats, leisure boats. This is something that we really think it's very promising, and he will also explain some great stories which are happening in India. So the floor is yours, Suyash.
Thank you so much, Nikos. Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction, and to Andre and Neil for the nice opening remarks. Can we have the first video, as a lead-in? Thank you, Bridget. Thank you. Thank you for playing that, Bridget. Let me, quickly begin my opening remarks by thanking the WLPGA for asking me to share our experience on the successful trials of the marine outboards. We conducted these trials on the southern coast of India. It's one of the bigger states of India, that's Tamil Nadu. And the engines were imported from the Propel Motor Company, as you just seen the videos from the US. And the trials were facilitated by Indian Oil. Indian Oil, you might be knowing, it's one of the biggest LPG companies in the world, doing almost, I believe, more than 12 to 13 million tons just by themselves. You would see a more detailed video also, but just after this, but I wanted to provide a very good context to the innovation and the game-changing impact it would possibly have on the lives of the fishing community. These engines were comprehensively tested on a chassis dyno and did come out with flying colors. The setting up the engines itself on the test bench was a challenge, as agencies have not really done trials like these earlier. And I'm going to quickly talk about the two key aspects, 2 or 3 key aspects why this could be game-changing. The first is on the emission side. In terms of the EU standards, the emissions from the factory-built OEM Propel outboards were lower by almost 80% for HC NOx and about 70% lower in terms of CO. And even if we compare to the US EPA standards, which are considered to be the most stringent, one of the most stringent in the world, emissions were lower by almost 50% for HC NOx and 60% lower in terms of the CO. In terms of the cost reductions, LPG outboards, they just perform terrifically well. On an average, a fisherman in India runs the outboards for about 8 to 10 hours a day, with each trip being about 4 to 5 hours going into this sea and back. They spend about 3,000 a day, rupees 3,000 a day, which is about $40 US. And running on LPG reduced their expenses by almost 60%. And if you look at the broader context, that the annual median income for this community, the fishing community, is less than $4,000 annually, about 3 lakhs. That's the annual median income for the community. LPG provided them with a saving of almost $8,000, which is about 6 lakhs, which would double what they're earning or saving annually, and resulting in a very quick payback. For this, during the panel discussion, I'll share some more details on that. We've been working very closely with the district fishery level departments. We're trying to see if they can help the fishermen to tide over the initial cost through subsidies directly to the fishermen, allowing them to move from gasoline to LPG. And what we have also seen, it is critical, absolutely critical, to not to follow the existing supply chain. We did try to work with the existing dealers for gasoline engines, and we saw for the gasoline outboard suppliers, but we saw that there is a huge resistance to change with the existing engine suppliers. They don't want to change. And it's imperative to work directly with the LPG companies to make it successful. To close my opening remarks, I believe running outboards on LPG is going to be a game-changer innovation for the industry. It is extremely environment friendly. You just saw the results on emissions, and it is extremely economical to run on marine outboards on LPG. It has a potential to decisively change the lives of fishermen, and it's not just maybe fishermen, it's also about the rivers and lakes. LPG in marine applications is a compelling proposition. It provides huge savings. It is a portable solution, and I will elaborate on that during the panel discussion. And major reduction in emissions, even when we compare to the most stringent of standards. So it truly humanizes energy. So that's my opening remarks. Thank you, Nikos, for allowing me to share my thoughts. Thank you.
And I think so, yes, that also the video that we have will let people understand exactly what you were talking about on the fishing side with the fishermen in India.
पैसा कम है ना, उसमें कोई टाइम में 3,000 आप लोग के पास नहीं, मतलब कल नहीं जाएगा। पैसा नहीं है तो कल नहीं जाएगा। इसमें तो 500 में मतलब 500 तुम जा सकते हैं, 500 रुपये भी तुम जा सकता है। ये फायदा वहाँ पर तो तुम 10 घंटा जाएगा, तुम्हें 300 रुपये चाहिए 3,000 रुपये चाहिए, ठीक है ना। तो वो तुम्हें फायदा आएगा। और तुम रोज जाता है? हाँ, रोज जाता है। नहीं, अब जैसे मानसून आएगा तब तो नहीं जाएगा। नहीं, उसका अलग है। अच्छा, अलग है, रात को जाता है। अच्छा, अलग है, अलग पैच।
Thank you for playing this, Nikos. Yeah, LPG humanizes energy. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely, and it reinforces even more, Sriyash, what you were telling us. Really, I mean, the story of these outboards and what it brings to the fishermen, as you very well said, you know, it's very exciting. So much emissions reductions and so much, humanizing it, if you want, you know, for the fishing community. So many things to go for. So really many thanks again, Sriyash, for presenting this. And with this, we go to our next panelist. who is from the manufacturer, as I said before, MAN Energy Solutions. So we have with us Hrishikesh Chatterjee. A big welcome, Hrishikesh. Hrishikesh is the promotion manager in MAN Energy Solutions, particularly for the two-stroke engines, which are the engines that we have today, based in Copenhagen, and he's responsible for all the building projects which are being run today, either new or retrofits, conversions for UK and for Americas. Before that, Hrishikesh, he worked with AP Möller, Maersk. Many of you know Maersk, of course, as a project manager for large-scale retrofit projects. So maybe I should leave it there and ask Hrishikesh to take us, through the side of the manufacturing of these LPG engines from MAN. So the floor is yours, Hrishikesh.
Thank you, Nikos, and thank you for inviting MAN for this lovely session, LPG Talks. I have a short presentation, and I think this will help you, all the audience, to see and understand where we are on the two-stroke side. But going forward, this is our MAN BMW ME LGIP. It's a lot of terms here, but basically it's the LPG engine used for propelling the large vessels. And yes, and going into the next slide, this shows basically the market overview where we have on the dual fuel technology. And right at the center stage, you can see LPG. This is actually second in line with after LNG orders. So 126 engines so far we have sold. And in the next slide, where we will see the breakup, is also highlighting the numbers of vessels which have hit the water. So bottom of the table, you see 126 engines, and out of that 41, which is marked in red, is the engines which have hit the water. And that means such an exciting time for two-stroke. And as an engine designer, we are getting loads of feedback coming back to our R&D, where we are able to process that and refine our product even further. But it has become a stage where it's a market standard for all the VLGCs. And that's why all the vessels which are carrying LPG are definitely have a no-brainer to use this as a product. So we have the 60, 50, and 35 bores. And we have highlighting the 60 bore on which all segments we can use this. So it is basically covering almost all the large ocean-going vessels. Going to the next slide, we have this overview, which I don't really want to spend too much time because all our fellow panelists have really highlighted these advantages so much. But as you can see, it basically has the advantage of reducing your carbon emissions and SOx and particulate matters. And the best part is the infrastructure is all over the global world. Going to the next slide, we have this overview of the engine itself. We are using the diesel combustion principle. That means it's really efficient by nature, and it is preventing any pre-knocking and having a proper combustion with negligible slips. And that's why we are able to utilize almost any kind of a dual fuel technology in this platform. And as you can see, the yellowish part, which is the dual fuel component, it's modular in nature. That means we can actually use it on our MEC engine as an add-on. And this also gives us the advantage of retrofit, which you will see in the next slide. This is our proof of retrofit so far. We have converted LPG engines 50 for BW, and they are all in service now. So we are basically not only saying, but we are also doing and proving to the world that there's a huge potential. And there is roughly 3,000 ships which we see as MEC engines, which have the potential to convert into LPG. And in the next slide, when you go, you will basically see that all the MEC engines are convertible to any of the dual fuel technology. And that basically gives such a enormous flexibility to the industry to think and move forward in this direction. And with this, I will summarize all my points that we have a proven technology, which is now an industry standard and which has this potential to actually make an impact in decarbonizing shipping. And with this, I will like to thank and hand it over back to Nikos.
Yes, many thanks, Hrishikesh. Really very exciting what we always hear from MAN, the pioneer of these engines. Very nice to hear the updates on the new engines, that 41 actually vessels are already on the water and sailing. Fantastic. And so everything really great. Thank you very, very much for this overview. And with this, we will go to our next panelist. Our next panelist, Iason Hadzakis. Welcome, Iason.
Thank you, Nico, and thanks to our previous speakers for very interesting presentations. I'm very aware of MAN's work. We had them here last week on the alternative fuels and especially LPG. And so, yes, I was actually very happily surprised by your presentation. I have a small boat myself, and I didn't even know that you are actually developing LPG-powered outboards. So this comes to, well, first, let me say a few words about our company. We operate gas ships. Among these, we have 8 LPG carriers, mid-size carriers. These are 40,000 cubes each. I'm sure most of our participants are aware of them. They are the workhorses of the LPG industry. They carry the gas to smaller places, to motherships, and so on. We have not yet installed an LPG-powered engine on our ships, but I think it's a quite high possibility that this will happen in the future. It is a good fuel. From not being a total expert myself, I can tell you from the ship manager's point of view and the naval architect's point of view, what I especially like about LPG is its energy density. So, as you might very well be aware, if you change an engine to LPG versus the traditional heavy fuel, you only need 1.5 times the bunker volume that you would need with a heavy fuel. Now, all other fuels are 2 and above. You need twice the bunker volume and above. And usually when studies are done, they do not take these practical considerations into account. But when we have been designing our ships, our mid-size carriers that are medium-sized ships, they are about 200 meters long. We were trying with the shipyard to fit an extra 100 to 200 cubes of fuel to increase the range of the ship somewhere, and we couldn't find it. So this plays a very big role, that you need less of a volume than other alternative fuels. And another very positive factor that I have noted is the existing experience. Now, most other proposed fuels, without saying that one is the best right now, they are quite new and quite exotic. LPG is everywhere. It's for somebody who smokes, it's in the lighter. For somebody, when I was a kid in my grandmother's island, our refrigerator at home ran on LPG. This means that a little bit of expertise is already there. And since the people are the most important factor, this is something to take into account, that we are already quite familiar with it as opposed to other fuels. And finally, to note something from, let's say, the more macroeconomic, the more macroscopic point of view. We have a challenge right now because for the last 3 years, we decided as a planet that finally have to do something about emissions. All the proposed solutions are heavily constrained on the supply side. And I know I'm not supposed to say the word ammonia in this forum, but some of our ships do carry ammonia, and it is a commodity that we're also involved in, very heavily constrained from the supply side. Same for LNG, especially now with the geopolitical situation. Same for biofuels, which are actually starting to compete with the growth of food for humans. So we don't have the luxury right now to say that one fuel is the best. And alternative fuels are good for different applications. And there is quite a few applications that LPG is very good for. So since our participants voted, I was happy to see that small boats and ro-ros were quite high on the list. And in my opinion, ships that go from a fixed point to another point can have a lot of benefit from using propane as fuel. And the other point, finally, because I don't want to take too much time, is that there is a lot of geographical differentiation in LPG, as with in many other fuels, both in terms of supply and in terms of the pricing. This means that there are some areas in the world where LPG is very abundant and cheap. So why not use it? Since it is better for the environment, it is cleaner, it is as a liquefied gas, very well behaved, I have to say, compared to some others. And if the right precautions are taken, it's also very safe. So that's all from my side. I'll be happy to answer any questions directed onto the shipping part of the business. And thanks again for your time.
Yeah, many thanks, Jason, and I really appreciate your balanced view on the alternative fuels, and of course your appreciation on LPG as one of the best alternative fuels that we have today. And very rightly, as you said, very important. It is the energy density of the product. And here LPG is really, has a very clear advantage over all the other fuels, not to speak about ammonia or even hydrogen. So this is very important. We know for the ship operators, they don't want to carry volumes of unnecessary fuel. I'm also very happy to understand that very soon you will acquire an LPG outboard engine for your boat, right? Okay.
When you ship it over here, say yes. Yeah, put me on the list.
Absolutely, we will do that.
All right. Fun.
We will ride on a heavy-duty engine to reach your place and give it to you there.
Fantastic.
Even better.
So, and this brings us to our last panelist, our last speaker and panelist that most of you, of course, it cannot be anyone else than Panos Mitru from Lloyd's Register, the gas segment manager from Lloyd's Register, and very important, the chair of our marine activities in WLPGA. So, Panos, I don't think I need to say much as an introduction for yourself. I'd rather let you lead us through the next part, and the floor is yours, Panos.
Thank you, Nikos. Thank you for your kind words. And I really enjoyed the presentations and interventions from previous speakers. I would like to emphasize on the point made by Asonas on energy density. Indeed, for future fuels, those clean fuels that we have seen today, them they have an energy density that is lower, and this will require an intervention on the design of the ship eventually, because we will need to have greater cubic capacity to address the problem. So apart from that, I would like to also add something that we see lately more and more: the blending of CCS on board, of carbon capturing on board, with the use of LPG as fuel. And again, reiterate the fact this is a pure fuel, and this has a number of benefits, starting with local pollution, which is of primary importance because practically we see an impact in lives due to local pollution issues. But it's not that. There are many more benefits as we explore the ground of new fuels. We see more and more benefits about having a pure fuel, and it's not only maintenance. It's, for example, carbon capturing technologies, fitness, and how a pure fuel leads to a pure carbon dioxide produced. So there are a lot of parameters perhaps we have not taken so well into account. And I think we will have the chance to explore those parameters more as we dig further into the LPG as fuel question or the LPG as fuel prospect within the LPG sector. And as you properly mentioned, and we mentioned now, Nikos, even beyond the LPG sector and LPG carriers. So in this context, I would like to add LPG is becoming now a necessity due in the as we have seen it's becoming a necessity in the LPG sector, primarily not due to pricing, because pricing has been challenging in the last few years, but primarily to CII and EXI and the other rolled out new mechanisms, new regulations which require ships to build a compliance step into the future. And LPG and other fuels, but primarily LPG with its maturity, can address that need for a step to the future, to a compliance level as dictated by CII and EXI. So this is why we have a Notebook Day. I will simply emphasize on the fact that we have around 15 ships that have retrofitted, and this is important because now we talk about retrofits. New construction projects will take years to replace and renew the fleet. We need to be working on the existing fleet to upgrade its carbon footprint. And so what do we do? Because we are talking about collaboration, it's a nice word, a buzzword. We use it a lot. But in our case, with the effort that we started with WLPGA, we want to produce tangible results, and we want to attain tangible milestones as far as collaboration or a joint work within the sector is concerned. And in this sense, we plan to have very soon a publication on a complete LPG as fuel guide.
And I think we might have lost Nikos. There was some.
It's not studies, but practically what will.
Sorry, Nikos.
What we will try. Excuse me.
Sorry, Panos. Go on. The connection is a little bit, and we lost you for a minute. But please proceed.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. So this LPG as fuel guide, we want to cover A to Z all the requirements that will be needed in order for an owner or a port or a stakeholder to start working with LPG as fuel. So this is something we are focusing on. And the second thing is we will also be working with a major liner, not an LPG carrier operator, with a major liner on a new joint project, a complete feasibility study for a retrofit of a container ship. And the idea comes after exploring the market on how could we have a success story about LPG as fuel. And the answer is we focus on ships that perhaps don't have the economics and the life cycle left to shift or wait for clean fuels, ships that need to take a step today, and of course do this in the most efficient manner, doing this in a way that the return on investment will be the greatest possible. And we have made a survey of the global market of LPG, identifying trade routes and places where this could have the greatest impact. So we're talking about a 15% saving, most probably for a ship that would not have ways to comply with CII other than just slowing down. And we are talking about an economic benefit for both the owner and the environment that will come by the use of LPG, and the retrofit to something that has practically similar prospects with LNG, but it's almost half the cost of converting. So these are the few points I wanted to make. I don't know if my connection was of the right quality for all this to be heard, but I'm open to questions and the discussion to follow.
Oh, I think Panos, it was not absolutely perfect, but I think it was good enough, and I think we heard you well, and particularly on the plans that you have, we have in mind. We know very well that Lloyd's is in the best position to know what the market needs, what the customers ask, and this is what we are here to offer. And thank you for informing everyone about our future studies for the guide that we're going to produce and the feasibility study, particularly for the container ships, for retrofitting the container ships. But with this one, maybe Andre, I don't know, we should open the floor to questions from the audience, and I see that we have very many.
We have a few that have been coming in, which is great about what LPG represents as a marine fuel. And let me start. You can probably direct. Some of them are directing, but let me start with the first one from Adi Neubor. And how easy and feasible is it to modify an engine to LPG? What are the pros and cons of such modifications to the consumer?
And I think actually this question comes together. It is almost similar with another question I had seen in the panel for modifications from diesel to LPG. So who would be best to take this question?
Maybe I'll jump in, Nikos, very quickly from the point of view. I'm sorry, Rishikesh. Sorry about that. From the point of view of two things, because I saw many questions directed on this. On the smaller engine side, we do not recommend retrofits because there have been many trials which were conducted, not just in the recent past, but even in the past decade. And the experience was that the conversion kit systems, even if it's the best of conversion kits, do not provide that kind of performance which an OEM engine does. So I would kind of, and again, on the heavier side, Rishikesh, you would jump in and answer that, but we do not recommend conversions on a smaller engine. So yeah, go ahead, Rishikesh. Sorry about that.
Only echo Suash's opinion actually is really right. And for the large engines, large ocean-going vessels, as I showed in our presentation, we have actually done the actual conversion. So we have a significant learning, and that's how retrofits happen. I've been a project manager for retrofits for 5 years. And I understand, the process that in the beginning, it really is something different, but then you are able to optimize and scale it in a way where you can make it a very efficient process. And that's how the end customer will be impacted. It's an expensive process, but yes, in the end, you have a business case which gives you a clear idea about payback time and all the other situations. So you can take your decisions wisely. But from a large engine perspective, it's possible. Over to you, Nikos.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, exactly. There's a big difference between, of course, the small engines and the big engines like MAN, which are actually conversions from diesel engines, which are very, very, very successful.
And Nikos, just to comment on that, and also from Adi, since the LPG and the cylinder detection is somehow difficult to measure precisely, how are the companies providing a solution to provide confidence that they won't be left without fuel in the middle of, water, middle of a lake or an ocean?
First of all, I would like to say that this is a big advantage of LPG compared to, let's say, electrification that some were suggesting, because with LPG, you know what fuel you have with you, you know how much you have and how much longer it will last you. So LPG is ideal for this. But I'm not sure I understood the question on how we are sure that we will not run out of.
Correct, because has the level sometimes it's not always easy on cylinders. So for smaller boats, not for vessels or bigger boats, of course. How would we be able to, make sure that they always have fuel to reach land?
Well, I would say that there is nothing different in measuring your level with LPG or with gasoline or with diesel. There is a level gauge, a level measuring system, and we must all make sure that, first of all, this is reliable. Second, that we have a reserve. Of course, the sea is not something that we can risk. I mean, and with the LPG cylinders, it's very easy. You have a reserve cylinders on the side. You may use it, you may not use it. So I would probably think that the LPG cylinder solution it's much easier even than the gasoline.
I tend to agree. I'm just transmitting. Don't kill the messenger. I'm just transmitting the questions. a couple of other questions coming from Scott Vildovas. What size engines are available for LPG outboard engines? And also, how many liters running hours does the 15 horsepower engine uses?
I guess that question is directed for the smaller engines. Currently, the engines which are in vogue, it's mostly the 9.9s and the 15 horsepower engines. And we are working on higher capacity up to 75 horsepower also. That's the current range of the outboards. To answer your second question, on the 15 horsepower engine, we've seen a consumption of about 2.5 kilograms per hour of LPG. That maybe depends on the ocean current. If it's if the ocean is quieter, the consumption could be just a bit lesser, but it's about 2.5 kgs per hour at the most. Thank you.
Thank you, Siyash. Thank you for the feedback. Scott, I believe it was answered to the question. Do feel free to reach out. We have one directed for MAN, Rishikesh. So Esteban Pajares asks, working at such pressures will possibly increase NOx. So how does LPG compare against other fuel?
Yeah, very good question, and I think well asked. So we use in MAN the diesel cycle, and diesel cycle is a high pressure and it creates higher chances of NOx generation. But all these engines are equipped with Tier 3 compliant if they have opted for it. So they will have a abatement system. That means we have an SCR in the LGIP engines. So they will make sure that the emissions are in compliance with the regulations. So that's how we basically comply. And LPG by nature will also create lesser NOx. So they will have 15 to 20% lesser NOx when you compare it to any conventional fuel. So you have a benefit over there. But overall, this is how the picture looks like on the two-stroke side. Over to you.
Thank you, Rich.
And just to add, it's nothing more than what we use with a typical fuel engine. So practically whatever will be needed as abatement with the typical fuel engine will be even less as a requirement for an LPG fueled engine. So it's not like we add any abatement system for the LPG as fuel engine. This is a prerequisite for the typical diesel fuel engine as well.
Thank you, Panos. Thank you, Rishikesh. And following on with the questions, Nikos, if I may, we have one from our dearest David Tyler. Hi, David. Thank you for joining. Always great to have you with us. From David to the panelists, there are millions of small engines that have been converted successfully to autogas. So why is it so difficult to convert small marine engines?
It is not difficult, I would say, at all. Probably, I'm sure Suyas would agree with me. There are many inboard and outboard engines which have been converted from gasoline to LPG. For some reason, this activity needs a little bit of embracing and our support, and it has all the things to fly. I mean, we know that converting a marine engine, a small outboard or inboard, it's not new. It's like converting an autogas, a car to LPG. So the technology is there. But for some reason, as I said, it has not taken up. But I'm sure with our efforts, it will. Something I would like Andre to, because I see in the chat something very interesting, and I would like to bring it in both as an information but also as a question. I see it from Korea, from KLPGA. Jae-sung Park is writing to us in Busan, in Korea. We are conducting a small LPG hybrid ship demonstration project. I would like to take the opportunity to say that hybrid LPG ships really have attracted our attention a few years ago. And we believe, at least personally, myself, I believe, that there is a big future with hybrid LPG vessels. So it's great that I see that this happening with demonstration vessels in Korea. And seeing this, the question is, are there any similar examples anywhere else? There were some examples, some testing or some pilots that I was told in the past. I need to look back into my drawers. But it's great that this hybrid LPG concept is again coming up on the surface. So I don't know, any other questions?
One
Yes.
remaining from Siva Shankar. What is the potential for retrofitting 200 to 600 horsepower diesel engines to 40 to 150 diesel engines? So what is the potential for retrofitting between 200 and 600 horsepower engines and from 40 to 150 horsepower diesel engines?
I'm not sure who has the best engineering insight for this question. Anyone in the panel that can take this one?
Lash, maybe you can take it.
Well, we are doing engines up to 75 horsepower, which is in pipeline. But those are, again, as I mentioned, the OE engines. I wouldn't be the best person to comment on the technology, but yes, maybe looking at what the MAN engines have done on the larger side. So I believe it's possible. Maybe Nikos, Panos, you are the best people to comment on this question.
Yeah, I would say that today, of course, as we mentioned before, retrofitting does not get the best result that we want in terms of performance, in terms of emissions, as an OEM brand new, solely designed for the purpose engine would do. So this is a starting point. And to be honest, I'm not sure to what degree smaller engines like 200 to 600 horsepower would perform well with retrofitting. It's not the same thing as retrofitting an engine from MAN, of course, which is something completely of a different dimension.
Nico, if I may, it's a matter of risks and risk management, commercial risk included as well. So if there is no market for a particular type of engine, under a particular type of fuel, or there is no incentive for the maker, then perhaps they don't proceed with the development of the necessary tools and upgrades. It's like what we saw, for example, we now see for four-stroke engines, some makers working on ammonia, on very challenging fuels. So if there is an incentive, I don't think there is any type of engine that cannot be fitted to be working, operating with all fuels that we know.
Okay, and Andre, I think we are reaching our time. I think to complete
that went fast.
webinar.
When there is interest and questions and interactive, so that was a great session. And it is time to wrap up our session. I really want to thank you all for being with us today and for the interest in this edition of the LPG Talks Live, and of course of LPG as a marine fuel. We had a super informative and actionable session, and we expect this to proceed after this session. A lot of social media, bring the questions, reach out to the panelists. I want to give a very special thank you to Neil, Panos, Yasin, Rishikesh, Suyash, and Nikos for being here with us today. And also, I want to remind you that there will be a power play focusing on LPG as a marine fuel during the LPG week in New Delhi.
Absolutely.
That will take place in November 14th to November 18th. So it's a month away. Make sure you make your way to New Delhi in that week, and I hope to see you all there in New Delhi. And so in case you want to share today's session with your colleagues, families, friends, I'm happy to announce that this session is going to be recorded and it will be available for all of you. I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank the LPG Week hosting partners. A big thank you to Indian Oil, Bharat Petroleum, and Hindustan Petroleum. We'll be launching the normal exit pool. Stay tuned, provide us some feedback, and also stay with this great video about what we will be having in LPG Week in New Delhi. Thank you so much and stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Andre.
Thank you.